Because I feel like for so long there was availability. I was a ski bum too. Like out of college, I was an instructor at Squaw Valley, spent a bunch of time, I should say the minimum amount of time teaching and the maximum amount of time skiing as I possibly could. But it was affordable. And I have friends that are still there, right? Like I knew I left Squaw Valley because I had this thing in my head. It's like, if I don't leave now, I'm never leaving. Right. So I got out, but there's friends that are still there. And the affordability in most of these ski towns has become so compressed. And even last year we were having a conversation. There's several ski resorts that couldn't spin all of their lifts all at once because they just didn't have the staffing. And the primary reason is because they didn't have anywhere for people to afford to live, to come to work, and it just didn't work. So I don't know how much you've been researching, guys. I'd love you to get your opinion on this. The availability of affordable housing around resort communities, I think, is shifting because they took for so long. It was just people could buy and they kept redeveloping, or we would take some of that sort of lower class or workforce housing and develop it even more, or rehab it into where it's selling it at a much higher price point. But suddenly you've cut out everybody that works there. So especially if you're looking toward development, what's your opinion and what's the mix there? Are you looking to build workforce? Are you looking to build high end? Like what's your lane?
I think, boy, there's a lot to that question. I think that, yes, 100% I agree. I know the problem you're talking about. I see it over and over and over again. I follow a lot of the resort stuff and a lot of the happenings in some of these towns, all the stuff that's going on with Vail and that big fight they're having over that one parcel of employee housing. It's a huge problem. It's been a huge problem forever. And I don't know the answer,
right?
But, I think, as you see, and I think it's some combination of a public-private partnership. And that's what you're starting to see, to where, you have to work with some of the local folks in the government there to provide the land at some reduced rate that they know is earmarked for workforce housing. It's going to have to be some public-private partnership. And there are guys out there like myself that are, and maybe that's where I end up aligning myself, that they are becoming subject matter experts in providing that to resort towns. Like they're good at that. They know how to navigate that. And I think that, of course, I'd love to build a sexy, 4-story mixed use condo hotel and sell it for $1,000 a foot. Right. That's probably not a reality, but, so I think that I have to keep my mind open to that, to some public-private partnership. I don't know, but that's probably where it's going to be, because you're right. It's a huge problem.
Yeah. And it gets deeper, because that's the thing, is obviously you want the ability to sell. You want the ability, everyone wants to make a profit. All the investors want to make a profit. It's a part of the game. But if you don't have people that actually service that space, people driving 2 and 3 hours one way. Like I said, we talked offline. I was just in Jackson. We were having dinner one night, and one of the servers, again, near and dear to my heart, I've spent a bunch of time behind a bar and serving tables to make my life work early on. He said he was driving about 2 hours one way just to go serve at a restaurant. That's how he made his livelihood. So I think it's a very interesting, and you're right, it is a very nuanced question, and there's a lot that goes into it. And it even goes into, it's based in the space, right? Like Vail is different than somewhere down the line a little bit, or somewhere in Southern Colorado is different than Utah. But I think it's a problem that's worth digging into. And I was just curious about your take there.
Yeah.
So
I was going to say, and I was going to say, in the short-term rental, this recent rise up of short-term rentals put so much pressure on the problem and just exacerbated it. And I don't know that the solution is to limit short-term rentals. Like, wow, I've got these condos for my family and the ski town, and I want to use them and I want to rent them out. Oh, you can't get a license. Sorry. Right. Like there's both sides of that coin. And you're right. When's the inflection point when the lifts can't run because there's no workers, right? Like,
yeah. Well, and I feel like it's not even a coin. You're talking about like, one of those 37-sided Dungeons and Dragons roll or dice there, because it's not only that, you have the short-term rentals, which is one space, but also there's this perception that it's taking away from hotel revenue as well, and the taxation there. So there's like everybody's standing in a room and everybody's only got 2 pistols, but they don't know where to point to each other, and everybody's at ends, right? Yeah. So there's a solution that's somewhere in the middle, and we could go really deep into this. I was just curious on your standpoint, because I think there is going to be that, and it's not just skiing, right? It's resorts. It's you talk about places along a beach, or you talk about people who have locations along a riverside. Anything that has to do with resort communities, most of them are struggling with this. Where I grew up in Durango, it's the same thing. Like, how are you zoning? How are you, and also how are you policing? right? Like there's a the other side of the coin of short-term rentals that it's tough to police in certain cases too. So